On your Thursday episode of Locked On Raptors, it was another spirited effort for the Toronto Raptors against the Sacramento Kings, and then the fourth quarter happened.
You are Locked On Raptors, your daily Toronto Raptors podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, what's going on? And welcome to another episode of Locked On Raptors, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. It is Thursday, November the 7th, and I'm your host, Sean Woodley. Been covering the Toronto Raptors now for 11 seasons on various platforms. You can find all my work over on the Bad website at Woodley Sean, but now I'm also on Blue Sky, I guess. You can follow me there too at woodleyshawn.bsky.social or whatever the hell the handle is. We're trying it out. We'll see. Maybe it's good. Maybe it's not. I'm there, though. You can also find us in the Discord. Link in the description of the podcast. We know that's good. Hanging out over there with sickos just like you who love the podcast, talking through games. It's a great time. You can also go and support the Locked On Raptors newsletter. The link in the description of the podcast. It's free to join and get those emails to your inbox every single day with original writing from yours truly 5 days a week, plus Katie Heindel national pieces. It's wonderful. Today's show is brought to you by FanDuel. You can start the season with a big return on FanDuel. New customers can place a $5 bet and get $150 in bonus bets if you win that first $5 bet. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. And we'll get started here on your Thursday edition of the show, breaking down a Toronto Raptors 122-107 loss to the Sacramento Kings, who get to light the beam on the Raptors account. We will get into the good, the bad, and the as we always do after a Raptors game. We'll get into Davion Mitchell having a revenge game, a guy who I'm coming around on after maybe not being super thrilled watching to start the season. But we should start with that fourth quarter. This game for 3 quarters was super entertaining. Once again, a very spirited affair from the Toronto Raptors. Once again, shorthanded. No Immanuel Quickley, no Scotty Barnes, no Kelly Olynyk, no Bruce Brown. You know the deal by now. And yet they hung tight with a Kings team that is pretty good, has been playing really good basketball for the most part since starting the season 0-2. And, you know, it was the usual brand of stuff, right? Just sort of tryhardism abound. You had RJ Barrett, I think, starting this game 7 of 7. You had, really spirited defensive efforts from the rookies and the bench and Jonathan Mogbo and all of that in the first half. It was a really, really impressive defensive showing, I thought, for the Raptors in half number 1 against a very potent Kings offense. And then that fourth quarter comes around and the well just ran dry, both on offense and on defense as well, right? They kind of ran out of ideas, and you saw the disparity in talent, shot-making talent in particular, between these two teams down the stretch, where it's like the Kings are rolling out Malik Monk making ridiculous shots. And then, DeMar DeRozan getting and ones and totally doing the DeMar DeRozan mid-range school thing against RJ Barrett and Jamison Battle and Grady Dick on down the line. You saw De'Aaron Fox, Domantas Sabonis doing their thing as well. Keegan Murray had an awesome game. The Kings just have a lot of guys who can get a shot off late in these games, and the Raptors kind of simply do not. And we saw, again, the well kind of ran dry. RJ Barrett finishes this game 2 for 12 after starting 7 for 7. Not ideal. And then Grady Dick just did not have it going in this game. Foul trouble kept him out, only played 24 minutes, couldn't really get into a groove. And he's a player for whom, like, a groove is kind of a big deal. And so, look, there are going to be nights like this where Grady Dick doesn't have it, where he can't get his threes to fall. He was 0 of 5 from downtown. This is the Gunners' compromise. But once again, for the second straight game, we saw the limitations of Grady Dick and RJ Barrett having to do everything for this offense, which is, again, nothing against Grady Dick and RJ Barrett. They've been incredible to start the season. Only good things to say about them, but it once again sort of hammered home the need for Immanuel Quickley, who, by the way, was cleared for contact yesterday and seems to be ramping up potentially for a return this weekend in one or both of the LA games on Saturday and Sunday. That's great news because, man, oh man, do they need IQ back, especially for late game offense. This team has not been good in crunch time. You may already know this, and they didn't really pick up any extra crunch time minutes in the crunch time stats department last night because it was kind of out of reach by the time the 5-minute mark came. The Kings just went on this awesome run later in the fourth quarter, kind of in the middle portion where they couldn't miss anything. The Raptors were missing bunnies, turnovers, the thing you expect from the Raptors late in these games. as they've really had a hard time closing things down. They'll learn. This is all part of it. This is like the things you got to do to learn how to close games. You don't just wake up able to win close games in the NBA against the likes of DeMar DeRozan. You got to figure out how to do it. And like they did it on Saturday against the Kings. That was great. More often than not, though, you're going to see these late game struggles where the offense falls apart. The lack of Quickley and Barnes in their shot creation just really makes it so the offense is stuck in mud. Hard to get anything going. And credit to the Kings, man. Like, they don't necessarily pop off the screen with incredible defensive talent, but I thought they did a really damn good job of cutting off the Raptors' water and just making everything that they got up seemingly very difficult. And on top of that, it's just you're not able to sort of get that, as much as it was a nice game from Davion Mitchell, you're not able to get that just sort of bailout guy who has the ball in his hands, who can just go make something happen from nothing, right? That's what the Kings have in spades, and that's what the Raptors are missing in Immanuel Quickley and Scotty Barnes. Some pretty troubling numbers from their crunch time stats so far. It's an extremely tiny sample. None of this means anything. It's very early in the season, but sometimes extremes can be telling. The Raptors right now have a 97.8 offensive rating in crunch time. Really bad. They're just not getting anything going when things matter most, and we've seen that play out on the scoreboards as big leads have evaporated into nothing in a lot of these games. This is young team stuff. This is what's going to happen, but it's been there, and it's been pretty prominent. And then also, the other big element that I think lost them this game down the stretch, the defensive rebounding, has really fallen on hard times after a very good start to the season. In crunch time in 19 minutes, the Raptors are allowing or only grabbing 52% of available defensive rebounds. That means 48% of the other team's misses are being collected by the other team. That's rough stuff. And we've seen them plummet down the defensive rebounding charts pretty steadily since the first few games of the season, where they started really well. This was the number one team in the entire NBA in total rebounding to start the year. They're still very high up the charts because their offensive rebounding is incredible. They're still number one in offensive rebounding at 37.1% of their own misses being collected by them. That's great. But they started off in the first handful of games 6th or 7th in defensive rebounding. Really were doing a good job cleaning the glass. And since then, it has been a steady nosedive. They are now down to 26th in defensive rebounding. They were, of course, 29th last year. And look, this makes sense. They're pretty small right now. RJ Barrett is the nominal power forward out there, and he's doing an okay job rebounding, but I think he's kind of had some issues with, timing on his defensive rebounds. Like, he kind of just sort of jumps a little early, gets beaten out. It's a small thing that I've kind of picked up on, but it's there. There's, the box out issues, which, it's young team stuff again. I feel very old and being like, you gotta box out, but like, you gotta box out, man. And there were a few times last night where, granted, Domantas Sabonis, a hard guy to box out. I get it, but just sort of not being in the right position. Ochai Agbaji gets out muscled a couple times. There was a play in the first half of this game where Chris Boucher contests a Keegan Murray three. The three misses, but then Murray just kind of walks by Boucher, just kind of standing there, not boxing out at all. Murray grabs the miss and puts it back. Like, that's the kind of stuff that's going to kill you. And it's the reason their defensive rebounding has fallen on such hard times. And there was a lot of that last night. 16 offensive rebounds for the Kings in this game. Usually the Raptors do a pretty good job of winning the offensive rebounding battle. They only grabbed 8 of their own. Domantas Sabonis, pretty good, vacuuming up them boards. And the Raptors just couldn't kind of overcome that, on top of it being just a rough night for their offense in general. They only shoot 29% from 3. They don't get really the volume up you want to see. Grady Dick goes 0 for 5. You can only withstand so many off nights when you don't have that many guys who can kind of carry the day. And that was really the story of this game. This was a ringing endorsement for the need for Immanuel Quickley and eventually Scotty Barnes back on this team, and a need to sort of tidy up the defensive rebounding stuff, which should get better when Scotty Barnes is back as well. He's a very good rebounder for his position. Him and Pirtle, pretty good at sort of working with one another and team rebounding there. But right now, they're in tough, and it's it makes sense that this team that really only has one functional tall big man is having some trouble and hemorrhaging boards. But it cost them last night for sure. The Kings are good. Like, credit to the Raptors for hanging with them for 3 quarters after beating them on Saturday. I think the Kings are a pretty fun team. I think they've got a lot of juice, and again, that shot making down the stretch from basically anyone who can touch the ball on a given possession is really hard to contend with. The Raptors didn't do themselves any favors, I think, with like screen navigation and stuff down the stretch of this game either. From the guys who you expect to be good, like Davion Mitchell, to the guys who you expect to be less good, like Grady Dick and RJ Barrett. It was not the most banner evening of screen navigation and staying in front of the man. And the Kings just like have all these guys who, you give them a little window, they're either going to like rise and fire, stop and pop right when you get that sort of little, okay, here's like a tiny little gap in the mid range where I can pull up and score. That's DeMar's specialty, right? There's also this is a team that's really good at punishing switches, right? And if you're switching your pick and roll coverages and you're not fighting over screens, then you're at risk of, guys like DeMar finding Jamison Battle and going to work, right? It's just they're a hard team to guard. They do a lot of screening actions. They have really good screeners, especially in the form of Domantas Sabonis, and they have a lot of guys who can make shots. So no real sort of shame in losing to the Kings, but that fourth quarter, I think, really was emblematic of a lot of the stuff this team is just desperately in need of right now with a lot of the guys who are out of the lineup. We're going to come back on the other side. I want to get into Davion Mitchell, who I've been pretty hard on to start the season, but I'm starting to understand. I'm starting to come around. I'm starting to really dig what Davion Mitchell's doing. He had himself his best game of the season last night. We'll tell you why coming up in just one sec. Today's show is brought to you by Skims for Men. Yes, you've probably heard of Skims underwear before. Usually, in the context of it's great underwear for women, but now they have underwear for men as well, which you can go and check out. They sent me a couple pairs, and I gotta tell you, they're incredible. I am someone who is pretty finicky when it comes to the underwear I wear. I get hot. I don't like flowy boxers. I like a brief. And man, oh man, the Skims briefs are incredible. They're super lightweight, super comfortable, super breathable. I wear them when I play basketball. When I go play pickup, I have a couple of pairs of sort of long sort of tights I'll wear sometimes. But if I'm not feeling the legs being covered up and I just want to have some nice breathable athletic underwear on, I'm rocking with the Skims ever since they sent them to me. They are awesome. You can go and shop Skims men's at skims.com. Let them know we sent you as well. After you place your order, select podcast in the survey and select our show, Locked On Raptors, in the drop-down menu that follows. And if you're looking for perfect gifts for the whole family, Skims just launched their biggest holiday shop ever, also available at skims.com. Go check them out, skims.com. They're extremely comfortable. I rate them highly. Back at it here as we continue picking apart the Toronto Raptors 122-107 loss to the Sacramento Kings. A game, once again, that amplified the need for Immanuel Quickley to return. Very excited to hear he's been cleared for contact after this sort of strange dance of being doubtful every single night. Will he, won't he? He should be back, hopefully, this weekend. Fingers crossed. And if not, very, very soon in the offing. In the meantime, though, Davion Mitchell's going to play like he did last night. You can live with that. You can rock with that. Like Davion Mitchell, look, I've had my misgivings about watching Davion Mitchell in the lead guard role this season. He has driven me a little bit mad with, in particular, his just constant urge to throw every single pass he throws, no matter if it's a skip pass across the court, an easy kick to the corner, a swing pass along the perimeter, a pick and roll pass to a big man who's 2 feet away from him. He loves to throw them 100 miles an hour. It's just like a thing he does. And I think it's just a symptom of him being kind of a guy who tries really hard all the time, which there are worse things than guys who try really hard all the time. It is one of the things that makes Davion Mitchell fun to watch, is that he's always going balls to the wall, for better or for worse. We see it on the offensive end sometimes where he just gets a little out over his skis when he gets downhill and kind of like the decision-making doesn't quite catch up to his feet and mistakes happen, turnovers go down. That stuff's been driving me a little bit crazy. And I think there's been this sort of pushback when I've had critique of Davion Mitchell, but look at the assists. And it's like, yeah, every one of the Raptors gets assists, man. It's not special, but I do think there's been a lot to like from Davion Mitchell that I've maybe glossed over or been sort of slow to understand or appreciate. I think I'm coming around a little bit on it. And the game last night against the Kings was his best by far as a Raptor to this point. 20 points, 3 boards, 6 assists, a steal, 8 of 11 shooting, 2 of 3 from downtown. Cannot express to you how big a deal it is when Davion Mitchell hits 2 threes. Like all of the games where he has been able to cash a couple really change his overall effectiveness. And it's just a big deal when you're the lead guard. You got to have some 3-point juice. He does not have it on pull-ups. He's only shooting 25% on pull-up threes so far this year, on more than one a game, which is not really to my liking. When I watch Davion Mitchell, I'd like to see him make those sort of in rhythm, wide open catch and shoots, more of a routine thing for him. And the pull-up stuff I could do without. But, you got to have at least the threat of a pull-up. I'm glad he's trying it here and there, I suppose, to keep the defense honest. I just don't think the defense really cares, frankly. But, he's been able to counteract the lack of three-point shooting with a couple nights where it's gone in, and that's been great. Like, that's a huge swing thing when those go in. But the other stuff he does has been really fun. Like, the transition play from him has been a delight. He is constantly head up, full head of steam, driving deep into the teeth of the defense, whether he's scoring for himself or kicking out, more often than not just scoring for himself. He's a good rim scorer. He's shooting 65% at the rim. He shot 75% at the rim last year. Like, he for a small guy, I'm pretty amazed by his ability to finish around the rim. He had a couple of nice little floaters in close last night as well. He finds ways to make stuff happen just because he's fast, has a good first step, and all of that. I think he's also done a better job. You might remember I did an episode on Mitchell earlier this summer where I went through and watched all of his assists from last season with the Kings. And I watched a lot of his pick and roll play in particular with the Kings. And I found myself very unenthused by Davion Mitchell as a pick and roll operator because he had a really hard time getting downhill and into the teeth of the defense in pick and roll situations, creating from a standstill. Oftentimes it was screen comes from Sabonis. He turns the corner. Defense has gone under. He doesn't have the edge to get around and get deep. And he's often just kind of passing it to Sabonis at the nail and asking him to go do something, or resetting the possession with a kick back out to someone on the perimeter. And he's been better this year at just kind of turning on the jets, getting around a Jakob Poeltl screen and to the rim to score. That's great. I don't think his playmaking necessarily has been amazing out of pick and roll because of the aforementioned Clayton Kershaw level fastballs that he tosses whenever he gets into the teeth of the defense. But I do think there's been some scoring juice there, which has been really nice to see. And again, kind of goes into my sort of standing take on him, which is I think he's better served as an off-ball guy who can sort of do, without the shooting. But think back to like Norman Powell, for example, right? Where he just had this crazy first step where it came to him on the swing. Even if the defense wasn't closing out super hard on him early in his career, for example, where he was kind of a middling shooter, then he got awesome down, later in his time with the Raptors. But early on, he was like a mid-30s shooter, low 30s shooter. But he had that first step that was just so quick and nasty that he could turn the corner and get to the rim. And all of a sudden, like, him as an off-ball player has a lot of utility. I think there's that kind of utility for Mitchell on top of being the sort of transition pusher and obviously the defensive stuff he brings at the point of attack. And I think he's going to have a more pared down role once Quickley comes back. And I think I'm perfectly comfortable with him being the sort of full-time backup point guard when IQ returns. I think at the start of the season, I was just kind of ready to say, why not just give Jamal Shead the job? He's a bit more of a sort of polished point guard. But we're seeing Jamal Shead kind of struggle with some of the rookie stuff, and the shooting is not there for him. I actually probably trust Mitchell shooting more than Shead's right now. Maybe that's not the case long term, but I think I certainly am happier to see Mitchell pulling a catch and shoot three than Shead at this point. And so maybe it is time once Quickley comes back for Shead to kind of go do the 905 thing, work with Ulrich Shamshay, do the whole guide the team down there and sort of learn the ropes thing. I think that's perfectly fine. And my opinion has certainly changed on what I think the guard hierarchy should be since the start of the year, because Mitchell has done enough, I think, to just sort of prove he can capably handle that backup job and be pretty all right in it. And I think, there's going to be less burden for him to have to be on the ball all the time once Quickley's back, once Scotty Barnes gets back eventually, with the work we've seen RJ Barrett and to some extent Grady Dick do with the ball in their hands. Like, it's not going to have to be that Mitchell creates everything in those second units. He will probably get a chance to be more of an off-ball player while being the nominal quote-unquote point guard. And I think that's a perfectly fine role for him. And I wrote about this today in the Locked On Raptors newsletter. It'll come out. Maybe it's already posted by now. Maybe it's not whenever you're hearing this. But, there's room for guys who kind of drive you insane. And Chris Boucher has been an example of this for a while where, the lows are really low and they make you want to just like bury your face in your palms. But there's also a lot of moments where it's like, oh my God, Chris Boucher on a heater is like the most fun thing I've ever seen. This is great. The energy is palpable, right? And I think that's the thing with Mitchell is he's always given a damn, right? He's always going full tilt, and that can compensate for a lot of the sort of less thrilling stuff he does with the ball in his hands. And again, the sort of weird passing situations that he finds himself in. I think because he's just going all out all the time, like that is like a helpful thing. It burns him sometimes on defense too, where he gets caught up on a screen or, gets out of position because he gets overzealous or he gets back cut. He gets back cut a lot, but that's fine. People get back cut. The Raptors love to get back cut. It's like part of their identity right now. But yeah, I think the sort of the try hard stuff, the transition stuff, the finishing at the rim, all of that makes it so you can live with the stuff that Mitchell doesn't do so well. And I think watching a team over the course of 82 games, it'd be nice if everyone was a metronome who did the same thing every single night. That's probably going to lead to a lot of wins. Wins don't so much matter for this team. And Mitchell kind of rides those oscillations of awesome and infuriating and then awesome again. And oh my God, what is he doing? Oh my God, what was that pass? Whoa, we did this great thing again. He kind of toes that line. And those kinds of guys make the season fun. They make the season interesting. They make individual games kind of a wild card because, whoa, we're getting a good Davion Mitchell night. Damn, we're right in this. They weren't last night because no one else had a good night, but a lot of these other games that the Raptors have really been competitive in, you're getting good performances from Davion Mitchell. You're getting those couple threes that fall that totally swing his effectiveness and all of that. You can't count on those threes necessarily because he's just not historically a good three-point shooter, but when they do fall, they swing things dramatically. And that's a fun thing to have over the course of 82 games. It can be a slog having some dynamism, some whack-a-mole to your team and some of the guys in it. Not such a bad thing for the sort of juicing up of the entertainment value, if nothing else. So yeah, I'm ready to embrace Davion Mitchell, foibles and all. I will continue to take a shot every single time he throws a ridiculous pass at breakneck speed, like it's an Andy Roddick serve to a guy who's like 2 feet away. It's just going to be a thing we count and laugh at and have fun with all year. He does enough stuff to offset it that I'm perfectly all right with those being a thing you got to live with the Davion Mitchell experience. Really nice revenge game for him against the Kings. Always love a good revenge game. Very happy to see for him in his return to Sacramento. We'll come back on the other side. We're going to get into the good, the bad, and the to round out today's show, as we always do. Chris Boucher heaters, speaking of which, those are a lot of fun. Plus, a couple more injuries to deal with, and that sucks. Today's show is brought to you by our friends over at FanDuel, the #1 sportsbook in North America, where right now you can tackle the NFL action and get yourself some scratch, because right now new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if that $5 bet wins. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place, if that's your thing. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. Again, you'll get $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. It's a pretty nice trade-off. And of course, it's not just the NFL. You want to go throw some money down on the NBA Cup. You're fighting Toronto Raptors in a really, really bad group in the NBA Cup. Can they get it done? Just maybe. Throw some scratch down, why don't you? Unless the lines have tilted so much because the members of the Locked On Raptors Discord have bet it down so much. But you can go check out where the line sits right now for the Raptors to make it out of their group in the NBA Cup over at FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. Wrapping it up here on your Thursday edition of Locked On Raptors. Just a heads up, tomorrow it's the return of Toxic Positivity Friday. Hoping to get Katie Heindel on, and we're going to talk about how gettable is the Eastern Conference. Is there a top 6 team sitting here in the Toronto Raptors in plain sight as the rest of the conference falls into decay? That will be Toxic Positivity Friday for you tomorrow. But in the meantime, we got to get to the good, the bad, and the the way we round out every single episode of this here podcast after the Toronto Raptors play a basketball game. They played a basketball game last night. They lost that basketball game, but a good thing happened. Some bad stuff happened, and a thing that happened or is going on that has me intrigued as we cover in the good, the bad, and the every single time. Let's get to the good. Chris Boucher playing the Sacramento Kings is really good, and we'll shout him out for his first half barrage. We had 13 points. He hit 3 threes, had a dunk, did some very fun Chris Boucher things. Again, Chris Boucher, a guy who over the course of the years has driven me mad. In, then out, then in, then out, then in, and then out again, and then in again. That's the Chris Boucher story. And last night, very much in on what we saw from him. Let him play the Kings all the time. It's awesome. And man, same with Mitchell. Like I said earlier, when those threes are going, it's such a game changer for this team that is just in such dire need of 3-point volume, just for the math of it all. And to get 3 threes in that first half from Boucher was massive. They didn't get any more from the rest of the game, obviously, and he kind of tailed off in the second half. Some defensive issues, many defensive issues, a couple more totally baffling closeouts where he just leaves his feet and the guy walks by him like he's nothing. That's the Chris Boucher experience, baby. But overall, that first half heater, tons of fun. And listening back, I watched the recap of the game, the all possessions recap of the game this morning with the Kings broadcast on, listening to Mark Jones just sort of be baffled at Chris Boucher owning the Kings. Pretty fun stuff. Had a good time. Let's get to the bad, shall we? More injuries, man. More injuries. It sucks. Jonathan Mogbo left last night's game with a hip pointer. Didn't even really see where it happened. He just kind of checked out after he gave up a 3-point play or a 4-point play. No, he gave 3 free throws to Malik Monk. He checked out after that, and then we didn't see him come back, and he went to the locker room with a hip pointer. Hip pointers are weird. I know OG Anunoby had one last year, and it took him a while to come back. OG also seems to be a guy who takes a while to come back from stuff. Who knows? I was kind of doing a little bit of cursory research on what a hip pointer means for an NBA player and how long they're usually out. Anywhere from like 1 to 3 weeks from what you can read from some of the medical journals and stuff like that. But it's kind of it depends on the severity, how pointy the hip pointer was. There's some doctor parlance for you. But it sucks because Jonathan Mogbo, pretty important, it seems, to the Toronto Raptors playing functional defense. And I don't know who fills in those minutes behind him. I guess it's Bruno Fernando. I hope not. Do they get Kelly Olynyk back soon to just get some front court minutes? Hopefully, I don't know. But yeah, Mogbo, shockingly important to the Raptors defense. They've had their best defensive moments when he's out there. They lost the game by 15 points last night. He was a +4 because he's a plus-minus wizard once again. He's so long. He's so switchable. He's so disruptive. He just makes the lineups he's in functional defensively. The lineups he was in also struggle to rebound because they're small, and that's an issue. And, it's not his fault that he's the small ball 5. He's just being thrust out there and asked to go do the job, but it's certainly an issue. Again, a lot of those offensive rebounds came with Mogbo on the floor early in that fourth quarter before he went out. It's tough stuff. But yeah, not having Mogbo will kind of suck. And I've had a great time watching him, of course. I am the chief Jonathan Mogbo propagandist, I think, on Raptors Internet. And I'm going to be sad to not be able to do propagandist tweets about him, or skeets. Is that what they're called on Blue Sky? Skeets? I have no idea. But yeah, gonna miss Mogbo if he's gonna be out for a while. Or who knows? Maybe he's back by the weekend. They have a few days off here to recollect themselves. But yeah, not what you want for Jonathan Mogbo, who has been making strides despite, I think, maybe being the NBA player, non-Ben Simmons division, who is the least apt to look at the rim when he has the ball. Come on, buddy. Just put those floaters up, man. Like he's so athletic. He's got that sort of very in close quarters crossover move he can go to that he's busted out a couple times to score on guys. I wish he was a little more eager to go put it up and in, but he still does really nice things out there. The interior passing is a delight. The defense is awesome. We love Jonathan Mogbo in these parts. Hopefully he's okay. And then Jacoby Walter gets hurt too. And it sucks because it's the same shoulder. He had the AC joint sprain on that cost him the preseason and training camp. He's looked, a little bit green, obviously, but I think he's looked perfectly, fine for a rookie since he's been out there. He's hit a 3 or 2. He's had some nice cuts, things like that. A lot more sort of energy on the boards and on defense than I thought he was going to bring as a rookie. Still very raw, still needs some time, probably needs some G League time to bake a little bit, but it's a bummer that he might have a bit of a setback here on his shoulder that kept him out for about a month. That's crappy. It's the exact same thing. We don't know if it's the sprain or whatever. It's just they called it a contusion, but if it's a re-aggravation of something he's been dealing with, that is not ideal. Obviously, you hope it doesn't set him back too long because Jacoby Walter, like, there's a fit here for this guy on this team as someone who shoots and can defend. Like, they need those things very badly. And maybe he doesn't put it all together this season. I'd actually, frankly, be shocked if he put it all together this season because he's very raw. But I do think there's something there with him. And there's just like an element to his game, the sort of buzzy jitterbug sort of offensive presence he brings off the ball when he gets the ball in his hands. It'd be nice to be able to have that and see it either with the G League or with the Raptors. Hopefully this AC joint thing doesn't keep him out too long. And let's get to the shall we? The is just kind of an open pondering that I've had a couple times as, injuries have happened. Guys have been in and out of the lineup. What happens to Jamal Shead once the rotation is more sort of assembled and Immanuel Quickley comes back in particular? He's been pretty solid still in his minutes. I'm not having a bad time watching Jamal Shead, but you're seeing, I think the level of trust is waning just a tad because he's a rookie who's figuring out his way, right? This is just kind of the deal for rookies. It's a lot of trial by fire, and it might just be that some time in the G League after kind of seeing where he's at the NBA level, sort of setting the base, go to the G League, work out some stuff, come back, have a sort of end of the season stretch with the team. Maybe that's the move here for Shead. But if Mogbo's out, if Walter's out, maybe there still continues to be a role for him. I think it's kind of an interesting conundrum for the Raptors because I think playing in the NBA and getting minutes is valuable. This is why I think even before the injury, I don't think Jonathan Mogbo should be going down to the G League anytime soon because he's doing the thing in the NBA that he's probably going to be asked to do in the NBA for his first few seasons, which is be a small ball five, who's this connective piece, who's rebounding, who's offering switchability and versatility on defense. He's getting real-time reps at the job he's going to be asked to do. We're also seeing that with Jamal Shead, where he's probably going to be a backup point guard in the NBA. That's probably his long-term outlook. Maybe there's a starter upside in there somewhere, but odds are he's going to be a really nice backup. And he's been getting a chance to actually do that job in the NBA. I think that's good for development. Not every development arc needs to go through the G League. It's obviously a great tool. The Raptors have had a lot of success with it, but not everybody has to go down there to find success. Everyone's journey is different. Everyone's developmental needs are different. And I'm really curious how they play this with Jamal Shead. He's not really been featured much with 905 sort of anything. He's not been down in the camp or anything like that. He's been strictly an NBA guy so far. But as a second round pick, you wonder if he gets sent down at some point. And what does that do to the Raptors on ball defense? What does that do to the ability to kind of have guys who can go create an advantage in the half court when you need something? That's been something Jamal Shead's been pretty good at. That first step is pretty electric. And so, yeah, I'm just fascinated to see as they start to get some bodies back here. Hopefully Olynyk soon. Again, we're still very much up in the air on when Olynyk's going to be back. He's traveling with the team, which is a good sign, I suppose. Quickly, hopefully back this weekend. And then we'll see about Bruce Brown and Scotty Barnes beyond that. Mogbo, Walter, TBD. Maybe we get some information on them sometime today after this podcast has been recorded. But yeah, it's very much up in the air what the rotation's all going to look like, and fascinated to see how they handle Jamal Shead in particular. Because Mitchell, as we talked about before, I think has proven he's going to do just enough to be the solid backup point guard in this team. And maybe there's less of a window here for Shead to actually get those minutes. But we'll see. It's that's why it's a I don't really know how it's all going to shake out just yet. Just some end of podcast ponderings for you. We'll leave it there. Thank you so much for hanging out. As always, we'll be back again on Friday. It's Toxic Positivity Friday, as I've teased already. Going to take a look at the Eastern Conference and just how gettable a top 6 seed might be. Perhaps very gettable if we're being toxically positive about it. We'll have that for you tomorrow. And then, of course, you can go check all the episodes from this week. Yesterday, the show with Zulfi Sheikh was great, talking about the sustainability of some of these Toronto Raptors hot starts and much more. We would love to have you go subscribe there. Also, subscribe to the Locked On Raptors newsletter. It's much appreciated. It helps me out big time when you do. I think there's been good stuff over there. I'm writing every day. I'm really enjoying it. It's nice to have the blog fingers back and warmed up again. So please go and subscribe over there, the Locked On Raptors newsletter. Link in the description. You can also join the Discord while you're down there, as there is also a link to the Discord in there too. With that, we will send you off to the rest of your Thursday. Have a great one. We'll talk to you Friday. Thanks for hanging. Bye-bye. I need to hit this. It's been a while. Ooh, called his shot, baby.